How many takes did it take Chris to get through this intro? Find out all that and more on today's episode of One Cross Radio. Hey everyone, this is Chris and you're listening to One Cross Radio. And it took about 13 to 15 takes just to get through that intro. For whatever reason, I just kept flubbing my lines. Doesn't matter how many times I've done this intro. It's just one of those days. Oh boy. Anyways, today's episode is an interesting one because it wasn't originally going to be an episode. So let me unpack that a little bit. On a total side note, right now, I am down in Florida having a much needed vacation with my amazing wife, and my wonderful in-laws. We are down in Orlando, hopefully checking out Disney any day now. Anyways, back to the episode proper. So last week at work, we had our Comicon event, and it was awesome. I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but here are a couple of highlights that we got last week. We had been generously donated by two coworkers enough money to take 30 youth to go see Avengers Endgame, which was just awesome and wonderful. And it was interesting buying the tickets because I had to buy the tickets the day they came out. Like trying to buy 30 tickets that day was nuts. If you remember, when the tickets went on sale because there was no announcement beforehand, they just kind of dropped a trailer and were like, guess what? They're on sale now. Apps were crashing, websites were down, whole states lost the internet for the day. It was bonkers, but we got the tickets, and then I got to have a fun conversation with a coworker. Like, yes, no, movies do this. Remember when Star Wars used to do this? I miss it. Anyways, so we got to take 30 youth to go see the Avengers, and then someone heard about what we were doing, and they loved the idea of us taking the youth to the theater so much that originally I was told they were donating $250 so we could buy popcorn for the youth, because popcorn's crazy expensive. And that was insanely surprising and exciting, and I was so grateful for it. And then the check arrived, and they donated $500. So not only can we get popcorn, we can take the youth to the theater again later this year. So that was wonderful and exciting, and just made me love people. We also had a bunch of generous donations from some local places. A place called Glitterbug came in and did face painting for free. We had donations from a local board game place called Mon Cala Monk, and then a local comic book store right down the street from me a couple blocks, Burden Comics. They donated at least enough stuff that you could value between minimum 100, if not closer to 2 or 250. And the amount of trade paperbacks alone, it was definitely between 1 and 125. That's before the individual issues and all that. I know I'm missing some others. My as we're now called at work, my dynamic duo buddy Kyle, who runs the breakfast program and gathering, he knows a bunch of others. So thank you to everybody who donated, and thank you, dear listener, if you've been keeping this in prayer. I appreciate it. One of the other really exciting things was, so at work there's a lunchtime program called Gathering, and that's where there's the spiritual focus. That's where there's sharing of testimonies, discussing of scripture, playing of worship music. It is the avenue where we get to share the gospel the most. And on Thursday, May 2nd, we had 2 or 3 people come in to share. There was one guy who does some art, who's done art for Marvel, but is writing a Christian comic. And then the other, I believe, was Al Craig, who is the head of Living Rock. But then the third was my someone I consider a dear friend, even though I've only known him for a short time, Pastor Hector Miray. And Hector, I apologize for, over the past couple of years, always saying it Miray instead of Mirai. So Hector shared via video his testimony, his love of geek culture, and everything. And that's what I'm sharing today. Because Hector couldn't be there in person due to living and working in North Carolina. And us being up in Ontario, we couldn't be like, oh, hey, come on up to Hamilton for, like 15 minutes. So Hector was gracious enough to allow me to share the audio from our Comicon chat with. Hope you enjoy. So, introduce yourself, my good man.
My name is Hector Miray. I'm from Lumberton, North Carolina. I'm almost 40, somewhere in that bracket. And I'm a pastor and pseudo-professional geek.
Awesome intro. Loved it. So the first question is, can you share a bit about your testimony?
Didn't really grow up in church as a kid. Went to a church event when I was 13. Heard the gospel for the first time. And as it's quoted in the movie Almost Famous, the truth just sounds different. And I think the first time I heard the gospel, it just hit me. And I believed then, and spent the next few years of my teenage life in discipleship and growing in various ways in that, and started serving in full-time ministry pretty much right out the gate from high school. And God's just opened up a bunch of doors through different things, through youth ministry, camp ministry, college ministry, associate pastor, worship leader. Just kind of wore a lot of different hats in the ministry realm. And it's all just been a slow journey of me growing closer to God, and occasionally some people follow.
What is it about the geek culture that you enjoy so much?
I've always been really passionate about things whenever they click with me. And I mean, that's really what a geek is. It's someone that's enthusiastically passionate about something. And so I think geek culture is just nice because I spent the majority of my life geeking out about things that nobody else did. Like, nobody else cared. Nobody else got as excited about the things that I got excited about. And in the Comicon world and geek culture, things like that, you can geek out about something and probably find a small to very large group of humans that equally are excited as you are. So I think it's nice. It's an area of community where you could be excited with other people.
That's awesome. How do you see God in geek culture?
Man, in a lot of ways. I think one of the biggest things is that the stories that we're passionate about, that we geek out about, that and those things, I think a lot of them parallel stories that have been told for generations through the Bible, through the gospel. And the whole concept of there's nothing new under the sun. Every story we tell has some parallel, whether good or bad, to the truth of what God has brought us through so far. But and so, I see a lot of parallel. I see a lot of God in the parallels of the stories that we're telling and that we enjoy experiencing. But beyond that, I see God in geek culture in that all of these people that are passionate about so many different things, they're already kind of showing the passion and devotion that comes with following God, but just pointed at different things. Not saying that they're misguided in that, but just saying they already show that they have the capacity for it. And that's really when God calls us to worship Him with our whole heart or follow with our whole heart. That's what a geek really does, is pour their whole heart into something. So, I see a lot of it in there, that there are people that are looking for things to give themselves to. And even beyond that, all of these people that are in this culture are people that God loves, and a lot of times they feel misaligned or they feel abandoned, and that God is there for them whether they're realizing it or not. So that's probably another area I see it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. What are some of your geek credentials?
Okay, geek credentials. I was Blockbuster video game champion of 1993 or 4. For the state of North Carolina, I competed all across my state and won the video game championship for North Carolina. We had to compete in Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters, Clay Fighter, and NBA Jam, and I won for the state of North Carolina. So that I think that's my earliest geek credential. Um, I was a screenwriter for Clever Movies slash Screen Junkies for like 3 years. I wrote over 130 episodes for them, and man, those videos that are still kicking around the YouTube are like in the millions and millions of views. So that's nice. And I've turned that concept into a panel that I take to Comicons where we have fanboy face-off panels where people argue who would win in fights. And some of them have been as standard as like Goku versus Superman. Then I straight up led a panel the other week where someone argued Unicron from Transformers versus Meme Shaggy. And they had a 10-minute debate on how that fight would go down. So I've got some geek credentials with that. Faith and Fandom has been pretty solid in geek credentials. Like 2 or 3 of the books have been Amazon bestsellers, and I've been pretty much a staple in southeastern America Comic-Cons for about 6 years, showing up wherever I can. And I don't know, pretty active in most nerdy things in my region, so I'm accredited for that.
You're also on an upcoming DC show, Swamp Thing.
Oh yeah. Swamp Thing is I spent 3 days filming Swamp Thing, and I might be in it for like half of a second. I don't know, but I'm on episode 3, and so I did that, and that was fun. It was a fun life experience, and so yeah.
When I told a coworker of mine he's doing the Gathering piece, when I told him his mind was blown. He's like, "What? They're doing a Swamp Thing show, and he was on it." he was crazy excited.
It's gonna be pretty intense too, just from the few days I spent filming. I didn't get to see Swamp Thing or anything like that. It was all muggles in the room. But apparently there's like a whole like separate level of privacy and things you have to sign off on if you're in a scene with Swamp Thing. So yeah, but I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it too, man. What are some of your favorite comics or anime or show, like anything that would be under the geek culture umbrella?
Man, I try. It's probably easier to list the things I'm not into. Like I haven't touched One Piece. I think the rest is pretty much covered. But no, it's still Batman Hush is my favorite collected volume of Batman. Except Tom King's Batman right now is great, but it's a 100 issue story and they're only on issue 68. So if you try and jump in without all of it and expect to pay off before issue 100, you're going to be disappointed. Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men is one of my favorite Marvel books ever, and I think it's probably one of the best X-Men stories ever told. But Astonishing X-Men 1 through 25 was just really, really good. Mr. Miracle from Tom King was great. I'm checking out a new book called Ronin Island from Greg Pak. On manga, I still love reading My Hero Academia. I still tolerate reading Attack on Titan just because it's kind of getting to the Walking Dead point of like, just stop. But there's that. I still sci-fi and TV stuff. Still love Doctor Who. Think it was a bad choice to make us wait a year and a half from announcing 13th Doctor to getting an episode. Then once we get 10 episodes in a Christmas or a New Year's special, you cancel it for a year to let them film. I just think it's bad. I think you're going to lose a lot of traction. And a lot of ways I feel like you're going to lose more traction doing this than they lost when they announced Capaldi. because people weren't feeling an older, grumpy doctor after getting Matt Smith, and for all the positive and negative that came with Jodie's announcement, which I thought she did a great job. But you make anybody wait 2 years for a product, you're going to lose people that are interested. Really loving Resident Evil 2's remake, the video game. I'm looking forward to finishing it once the book gets published. Also plan on checking out Kingdom Hearts, but like one of my favorite things is just playing Smash Brothers with my kids. And my kids and I are also watching the entirety of Dragon Ball Z. One of the guys on my church staff bought the entire collection. And so he's been loaning us season by season. So we just finished the Cell games and the Cell Saga, and we got to pick that up and keep going. But we have done a lot of stuff with that. So it's, man, a lot of big geeky things. I just got to meet Summer Glau last weekend from Firefly, and it's just really neat. So I geek out about a lot of things.
All right, final question, my good man. Where can any of our youth find you online?
Facebook, for the Faith and Fandom page, is just facebook.com/Faith and Fandom, all spelled out, no ampersand. Twitter and Instagram is Faith and Fandom, all spelled out. My Twitter is a joke, but Instagram, you get a lot of photos and stuff. And then pretty much those places are where I hunker down the most.
Awesome. All right, well, Hector, thank you so much for doing this, my good man. I look forward to sharing this with the youth on Friday, and then again on the podcast later. And as always, it's been great to catch up with you, dude. Love seeing what you're doing. I'm praying for you frequently, and I hope you feel better.
Thanks, man.
No problem. And I'm looking forward to book 6 drop, and I'm definitely going to be picking that up as soon as I see it drop.
Thanks, dude.
Anytime. All right, hope you feel better, and thanks for doing this, buds.
No problem, man.
Have a good day.
You too.
Take care. All right, dear listener, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of One Cross Radio. And as always, if you can, please keep us in prayer. And pray for Hector and Faith and Fandom, and definitely check them out. Hector's a great guy, and everybody involved in Faith and Fandom does tremendous work for the Lord. So be sure to check them out. Hope you have a wonderful day, and God bless, my friends. Take care. Peace.